A single stone tool can shatter the entire timeline of human history. This video uncovers 25 archaeological finds that did exactly that, forcing experts to rewrite the story of our origins. You will leave with a completely new understanding of our ancient past, a narrative stranger and more incredible than any fiction. We will explore how a miniature human species once shared the planet with us, and why sophisticated art appeared simultaneously across the globe. What does it truly mean to be the only human species left on Earth standing amidst the rolling hills of southeastern Turkey? A visitor confronts a landscape alien to everything we thought we knew about the Stone Age. Here, massive T-shaped pillars of limestone rise from the earth, each one towering over a human and meticulously carved with foxes, cranes, and scorpions of stunning detail. This is Göbekli Tepe, and it is old, impossibly old. Its oldest circles were constructed around 9600 BCE, a staggering 6,000 years before Stonehenge was even a concept. For decades, the story of civilization was straightforward. First, humans learned to farm, then they settled down in villages, and only after that did they have the time, resources, and social structure to build monumental temples and develop complex religions. Göbekli Tepe shatters that sequence into a million pieces. This was not built by farmers living in a thriving town. It was built by hunter-gatherers, people who supposedly lived a hand-to-mouth existence, constantly on the move. The sheer scale of the work is staggering, quarrying, transporting, and erecting these multi-ton pillars, each one a masterpiece of stoneworking. So why would nomadic bands expend such colossal effort? How did they even organize such a feat without kings or chieftains? The revolutionary theory proposed by archaeologists like Klaus Schmidt is that the temple came first. It was the gravitational pull of this sacred place, the need to feed and house the workers and pilgrims, that actually spurred the invention of agriculture. The desire to come together for something beyond mere survival, perhaps a shared spiritual vision, may have been the true catalyst for civilization itself. This single site forces us to see our ancestors not as primitive brutes struggling for existence, but as architects, artists, and visionaries with a sophisticated understanding of their world and a powerful drive to create meaning on a grand scale. The very foundations of human history have been upended, all starting with these silent, enigmatic stones. Deep within a limestone cave on the Indonesian island of Flores, a discovery was made that felt more like folklore than science. Researchers unearthed the tiny, complete skeleton of an adult individual who stood barely over 3 feet tall. This was not a child, but a completely different kind of human, a species soon nicknamed the Hobbit. Officially named Homo floresiensis, this small being had lived on the island until at least 50,000 years ago, a time when our own ancestors were already spreading across the globe. The implications were staggering. We were not alone. The Hobbit presented a puzzle that defied easy explanation. Its skull housed a brain about the size of a grapefruit, far smaller than our own, and it had some primitive, ape-like features in its wrists and feet. Yet, the stone tools found alongside its remains were sophisticated and purposefully made. This single fact challenged one of the most deeply held beliefs in human evolution, the idea that a large brain is the sole prerequisite for complex thought and advanced toolmaking. How could a creature with such a small brain craft such effective implements? The answer seems to lie in a long and lonely evolutionary journey. Experts believe a group of early humans, perhaps Homo erectus, arrived on Flores nearly 1 million years ago. Over countless generations, isolated on an island with limited resources and unique pressures, they underwent a remarkable process called insular dwarfism, where large animals often evolved to become smaller. The result was Homo floresiensis, a perfectly adapted, diminutive human that hunted dwarf elephants and navigated a world of giant Komodo dragons. This find did more than just add a new branch to the human family tree. It revealed that the tree was a tangled, complex bush with many branches existing at the same time. The recent prehistoric world was a crowded one, with multiple human species sharing the planet. The existence of the Hobbit forces us to ask a profound and haunting question. If one such cousin could be found on a single Indonesian island, how many other forms of humanity evolved, thrived, and ultimately vanished, leaving only the faintest trace of their passage? The search for our lost relatives, once a fringe idea, is now a central, thrilling pursuit in archaeology, all thanks to the tiny bones from a cave in Flores. From a single finger bone, smaller than a pebble, scientists pulled an entire chapter of the human story. Deep within Denisova cave in Siberia, this tiny fragment held no obvious clues, its physical form offering no grand revelation. But its genetic code told a different story, a truth that physical anthropology alone could never have uncovered. Through pioneering work by researchers like Svante Pääbo, the DNA from this bone revealed it belonged to an entirely new kind of human, the Denisovans. We did not find them by unearthing a skeleton. We identified them by reading the biological instructions within a single piece of them. This was a revolution in how we understand our past. The genetic evidence painted a picture of a world far more interconnected than we ever imagined. Denisovans were not isolated. They interbred with Neanderthals and, crucially, with the ancestors of modern populations in Melanesia and Australia. Their legacy is not carved in stone, but written into the very cells of living people today. This changes the fundamental narrative. Our ancestors' journeys across the globe were not lonely marches into empty lands, but complex interactions with other intelligent beings, meetings that sometimes resulted in families and shared children. The story grew even more remarkable with a later discovery, a massive jawbone found high on the Tibetan plateau. This bone, robust and ancient, was identified as Denisovan through protein analysis. It proved this species was incredibly resilient, thriving in the thin, frigid air of one of the most extreme environments on Earth, long before our own species arrived there. This single fact shatters the idea that only Homo sapiens possessed the ingenuity to conquer such harsh worlds. The existence of the Denisovans forces us to abandon the simple tree of human evolution with its straight, separate branches. Instead, we must see a tangled, interwoven web where different human lineages met, mingled, and exchanged genes. The concept of a pure genetic line is a modern myth. We are the products of these ancient encounters, so the next time you look in the mirror, consider this profound question: how much of you is a living memory of a long-lost cousin? The ghost of the Denisovans does not haunt a cave in Siberia. It lives on silently within us, a testament to a deeply intertwined past. The shores of Lake Turkana hold stones that speak of a revolution before the revolution. For decades, the official story of human ingenuity began with the Oldowan, the first simple stone tools crafted by the hand of Homo habilis, the so-called handyman, around 2.6 million years ago. This act of striking one rock against another to create a sharp edge was considered the very spark that ignited the human lineage, the moment we began to shape our world instead of merely living in it. Then, in 2015, archaeologist Sonja Harmand and her team made a discovery that shattered this foundational timeline. They found stone tools, but these were different and they were impossibly old. Dated to 3.3 million years ago, the Lomekwi tools are a staggering 700,000 years older than the oldest known Oldowan tools. This single find pushed the dawn of technology back into a shadowy era of our past, a time dominated not by our own genus Homo, but by earlier, more ape-like hominins such as Australopithecus, the family made famous by the Lucy skeleton or the enigmatic Kenyanthropus. These were not the relatively refined, flake tools of Homo habilis. The Lomekwi tools are crude, heavy, and brutal. They were made not through the precise, controlled striking of one stone against another, but through a much simpler process of pounding and battering, using a large rock as an anvil and another as a hammer to smash open nuts or break apart bones for marrow. This was a eureka, a moment that fundamentally redefined intelligence. It proved that the cognitive leap to tool use, the mental capacity to see a rock not just as a rock but as a potential instrument, did not originate with us. It was a seed planted much deeper in our family tree. The individuals who made these tools possessed a technological mind, a conscious intention to modify their environment to suit their needs. They were problem solvers. This humble beginning forces a profound question upon us. If the ability to make tools is so ancient, what other capabilities, what other forms of proto-culture did these early ancestors possess that we have simply failed to recognize in the sparse fossil record? The journey of human innovation, it turns out, did not begin with a single brilliant flash. It started with a slow, deliberate, percussive beat on the shores of an ancient lake, a rhythm that would eventually build into the symphony of human civilization. High in the hills of the Republic of Georgia, a medieval town holds a secret far older than its stone walls. Beneath the ruins of Dmanisi, archaeologists uncovered not one but 5 ancient skulls resting in the earth for 1.8 million years. These were not scattered fragments but remarkably complete individuals, a rare family portrait from the very dawn of humanity's first great journey. And when researchers like David Lordkipanidze pieced them together, they were confronted with a puzzle. The 5 skulls were shockingly different from one another. One belonged to a large, robust individual with a heavy brow ridge and massive jaw, while another was from a much smaller, more gracile person with a lighter build and a less pronounced face. Yet they were all contemporaries, living and dying in the same small community. For decades, the story of early human evolution was one of branching complexity. In Africa, fossils were given a variety of names: Homo habilis, Homo rudolfensis, Homo ergaster, each one proposed as a separate species on its own unique path. The Dmanisi discovery shattered that neat classification. If all this dramatic physical variation could exist within a single, founding population that had just left Africa, then perhaps the diversity we see back on the continent was not evidence of multiple species, but simply the natural range of differences within one highly adaptable, single species of early human. This forces a profound simplification of our family tree. The first pioneers to walk out of Africa were not a parade of specialized, different human forms. They were one variable, resilient kind of people. This single population, capable of such a wide range of appearances, possessed the incredible adaptability needed to survive in unfamiliar landscapes. They were the original explorers, facing down new predators and unfamiliar climates with a versatility we never fully appreciated. The journey out of Africa was not a final, desperate flight, but a confident, ongoing expansion by a species already equipped for the world. How does this reshape our understanding of that first great migration? It tells us the key to humanity's success was not being the strongest or the smartest in a narrow sense, but being the most flexible. Our ancestors' greatest strength was their diversity, a trait written plainly in the bones of those 5 individuals, waiting silently in the Georgian soil for almost 2 million years. A face stares back from across 300,000 years, and it is unmistakably one of our own. This was the profound reality for researchers at a collapsed cave site in Jebel Irhoud, Morocco. The fossils discovered there, meticulously redated by Jean-Jacques Hublin and his team, reveal individuals with facial structures virtually identical to modern humans, a startling modernity framed by a slightly more elongated brain case. This single date, 300,000 years old, shatters a long-held cornerstone of human evolution. It pushes the origin of our species back a full 100,000 years, but the location is the true revolution. For generations, the dominant narrative was a classic out of Africa story, one that placed the dawn of Homo sapiens in a single, idyllic cradle in East Africa around 200,000 years ago. Jebel Irhoud, situated far to the north on the African continent, demolishes that simple idea. Our origin story is not a single event in a single garden. It is a pan-African saga. The evidence now suggests that early Homo sapiens were a widespread, interconnected population scattered across the entire continent. Different groups from southern Africa to the north were all evolving the mosaic of features that would eventually coalesce into the modern human form. A more modern jaw might have emerged in one region, while a more rounded skull developed in another. Through periods of climatic change, these populations would have connected and interbred, sharing and refining the very traits that define us. This turns the search for the first human into a continent-wide puzzle. What other regions hold crucial pieces? Could the sands of the Sahara or the forests of Central Africa conceal fossils that fill in the other parts of this grand, interconnected picture? The story of our birth is no longer a linear path but a vast, woven tapestry, with threads drawn from every corner of Africa, slowly coming together to create us. A handprint pressed into a cave wall in Indonesia carries a date that collapses a continent-centric view of human genius. This simple stencil, a person spraying pigment over their own hand to leave a permanent signature, was created at least 39,900 years ago. At that very same moment, in the deep caves of Europe like Chauvet and El Castillo, other human hands were creating breathtaking murals of horses, bison, and lions. For over a century, the story was clear. The human creative spirit, the ability to think in symbols and represent the world, had its brilliant flowering in Europe. The discovery on the island of Sulawesi, led by researcher Maxime Hobbit, proves this was not a localized revolution. It was a global awakening. The artistic impulse did not originate in one place and then slowly spread. It was a fundamental, shared capacity that emerged in human populations as they journeyed to the farthest corners of the earth. The implications are staggering. It means the people who crossed seas to reach Australia, and those who moved north into the icy landscapes of Europe, carried with them the same potential for complex abstract thought. They were not just physically modern, they were cognitively modern, ready to translate their world, their beliefs, and their experiences into enduring images. This forces a complete decentralization of our understanding of human cognitive development. The caves of Sulawesi are not a peripheral outpost of a European idea. They are a core center of a human one. This revelation opens up a vast, unexplored canvas. If such ancient and sophisticated art exists in Indonesia, what masterpieces are waiting in the caves of mainland Asia or hidden beneath the sands of the Sahara? The search for the origins of art is no longer a European endeavor. It is a worldwide quest challenging us to look everywhere for the echoes of our ancestors' first attempts to say, "We are here." A quiet stretch of highway in San Diego holds evidence of a story so old it defies belief. During a routine construction project, paleontologists uncovered the scattered remains of a mastodon, a relative of the elephant, its bones lying beside large, heavy cobblestones. At first glance, it seemed like a natural fossil deposit, but the details told a different story. The bones were not just broken, they were shattered in a specific spiral pattern that occurs when bone is fresh. The stones showed impact marks and were found positioned as if used as hammers and anvils. When researchers like Steve Holland dated the site, the results sent shockwaves through the world of archaeology. This mastodon was 130,000 years old. The established story of the Americas tells us the first people arrived around 13,000 years ago, the so-called Clovis people, who left behind distinctive spear points. The Cerutti mastodon site suggests a human presence more than 100,000 years before that. This is not a slight adjustment to the timeline. It is a complete rewrite of the first chapter of human history in the New World. The implications are staggering. Who could have been here? Our own species, Homo sapiens, was still primarily confined to Africa at that time. The builders must have been another kind of human, perhaps the rugged Denisovans, or even an earlier, more archaic species like Homo erectus, seafaring pioneers on a scale we never imagined. They would have needed to cross treacherous ocean passages or frozen land bridges that we did not know existed that far back in time. This site does not offer the clean, sharp spear points of the Clovis culture. Its evidence is more primal, the brute force of stone on bone, the simple act of breaking open a limb for marrow. This suggests a fleeting presence, a pioneering group that perhaps could not establish a lasting foothold. Theirs may have been a failed colonization, a lost chapter in the human epic. The Cerutti mastodon site stands as a profound and controversial mystery, a single, enigmatic data point that challenges everything we thought we knew about when and how the first people arrived in the Americas. It forces us to confront a haunting possibility that an entire human drama, the rise and fall of an unknown people on this continent, unfolded so long ago that only the barest fragments of their story remain. The tide recedes, revealing a surface more ancient than the nation itself. On a storm-lashed beach in Happisburgh, England, the North Sea's erosion briefly uncovered a series of hollows pressed into the hardened silt. To an untrained eye, they were just puddles, but to archaeologists from the British Museum, they were a miracle, the oldest human footprints ever found outside of Africa. Preserved for over 800,000 years, these impressions offer a moment frozen in mud, a hauntingly direct connection to a small band of early humans, likely a species known as Homo antecessor. We see not just footprints, but a walk interrupted, a group of adults and children moving together across a river estuary long since vanished. This single muddy pathway rewrites the map of human migration. It proves that ancient hominins had reached the cool, challenging environments of northern Europe hundreds of thousands of years earlier than any evidence had suggested. They accomplished this with only the most basic stone tools, a testament to sheer resilience over technological superiority. What inner drive, what relentless curiosity or need propelled them into such a harsh and unfamiliar world? A land of cold winters they were physically less adapted to endure than their African cousins. These footprints are not merely marks in stone, they are a silent story of survival, a fleeting glimpse of a family's journey into the unknown, challenging our every assumption about the limits of early human endurance and the deep, ancient urge to explore. A sinkhole in central Israel, a place where the earth simply gives way, became the stage for a discovery that would blur the very lines between human species. Within the layered sediments of Nesher Ramla, researchers led by Israel Hershkovitz unearthed a skull fragment that defied every category. It was not quite Neanderthal, yet it bore their distinct heavy brow. It was not purely archaic, but it had a jawline unlike our own. This individual, who lived between 140,000 and 120,000 years ago, was something else entirely, a member of a population now called Nesher Ramla Homo. They were a previously unknown kind of human, a group that had thrived in the Levant for hundreds of thousands of years. The real revelation, however, was not just their existence but their role. This region, the land bridge between Africa and Eurasia, was not a simple highway for one species replacing another. It was a vibrant, ancient melting pot. The Nesher Ramla people were not isolated. Genetic and anatomical evidence strongly suggests they interbred with the ancestors of European Neanderthals, likely giving them some of the very traits we use to define Neanderthals today. They also almost certainly encountered and mingled with early waves of Homo sapiens moving out of Africa. This single fossil fragment shatters the classic story of modern humans marching into Europe and simply displacing our primitive cousins. The truth was far more intimate and interconnected. Different human lineages met in this crossroads, shared the landscape, and sometimes started families, weaving their biological threads together. This forces a profound and humbling question upon us. If one such ghost population has been found, how many others are still hidden in the earth, their stories lost to time, their essence only surviving as a faint whisper in our own DNA? The Nesher Ramla Homo reveals a lost chapter, one where the human family was not a tree with separate branches, but a tangled, intertwined root system, all connected beneath the surface. Deep within the Atapuerca Mountains of Spain, a narrow vertical shaft descends into profound darkness. This is the Cima de los Huesos, the pit of bones, and at its bottom lies a mystery that has rewritten our understanding of ancient minds. Over 3 decades of meticulous work by Juan Luis Arzuaga and his team have recovered the remains of at least 28 individuals from this single site, creating the world's largest collection of hominin fossils from the Middle Pleistocene. These individuals rested here for about 430,000 years. Their bones tell a surprising story of identity, for their facial structures and teeth carry the unmistakable early features of the Neanderthal lineage. This is not just a random collection of remains. The bodies were deliberately placed here, carried one by one down a difficult, treacherous passage into this deep, secluded pit. This act, repeated over generations, represents the oldest clear evidence of funerary behavior ever found. It was not a practical disposal of the deceased, but something far more meaningful. The difficulty of access suggests this was a special place, a designated resting ground that held significance for the entire community. What compelled them to undertake such a challenging task? The accumulation of so many in one location points to a shared tradition, a repeated ritual that honored those who had passed. This forces a dramatic reconsideration of the inner world of our ancient cousins. It reveals a level of social complexity and emotional capacity we never before attributed to hominins of this distant era. They were not merely surviving, they were contemplating the profound mystery of death itself. They felt loss, they remembered their loved ones, and they acted on a shared belief system that gave meaning to the end of life. Was this pit seen as a gateway to an afterlife, a sacred chamber for the ancestors, or a communal memorial? While we may never know their specific beliefs, the Cima de los Huesos stands as a silent, powerful testament to the birth of ritual, the dawn of a human spirit that sought to reach beyond the tangible world and honor the journey of those who came before. Along the dusty river terraces of northern China, the Shuidonggou site reveals a technological leap frozen in time. Here, archaeologists uncovered a distinct and sudden transition in the stone record. For thousands of years, the toolmaking tradition in the region was characterized by simple, reliable pebble tools. a technology that had persisted for eons. Then, around 40,000 years ago, a new layer appears, filled with something entirely different: long, slender, and precisely crafted stone blades. These were not crude implements. They were the product of a sophisticated and efficient technique, where a prepared stone core was skillfully struck to produce multiple sharp, uniform flakes in a systematic, almost industrial process. This was a technology of experts, and it was completely alien to the local tradition. The origin of this new method points decisively north and west to the vast steppes of Mongolia and Siberia, where similar advanced blade tools are found. This was not a local invention, it was an import. The most compelling explanation is a migration of modern humans carrying their superior toolkit into new lands. But this was not an empty land. Genetic evidence tells us that the enigmatic Denisovans likely inhabited this very region for hundreds of thousands of years. The arrival of these new people with their advanced technology did not necessarily mean a swift and violent replacement. Instead, Shuidonggou presents a more nuanced story, one of interaction and exchange. The site challenges the old model of a simple, sweeping conquest by our species. What we see is a mosaic, a complex patchwork of adaptation. It is possible that for a time, these different human groups lived alongside one another, trading not only tools and techniques but perhaps also genes and knowledge. This single location forces us to abandon the idea of a monolithic human expansion across Asia. The peopling of this vast continent was a series of intricate encounters, a slow blending of worlds that shaped the unique cultural and biological trajectory of East Asia. Shuidonggou stands as a powerful testament to an ancient form of globalization, where a riverbank in China became a crossroads for humanity, a place where the future was forged not by replacement but by connection. The story of the first Americans is a tapestry woven from more than one thread. In a quiet grave in Siberia, the skeleton of a young boy who passed away 24,000 years ago held a genetic key to this deeper truth. This child, known as the Malta boy, was found with an array of grave goods, suggesting his community held a deep respect for the journey of the young. But his true legacy was written not in the artifacts around him, but in the very code of his being. When scientists led by Esk Willerslev managed to sequence his ancient genome, the results sent a shockwave through our understanding of global migration. This boy's genetic signature revealed a stunning dual heritage. He was not purely East Asian, as many had assumed for the ancestors of Native Americans. A significant part of his ancestry was directly linked to ancient populations from Western Eurasia, people related to the hunter-gatherers of Europe. This single genome rewrote the entire prehistory of the Americas. It proved that the foundational population of the New World was formed by a profound and ancient meeting of two worlds. Sometime deep in prehistory, a group related to Western Eurasians journeyed vast distances and mingled with an East Asian population. It was this already mixed group, carrying the genetic legacy of two continents, that eventually made the final, courageous crossing into the Americas. This discovery shatters the simple image of a single, homogeneous wave of migration. The peopling of the world was not a series of separate, isolated treks. It was a dynamic and interconnected process, a story of long-distance movement and intimate mixture that occurred millennia before the rise of farming or cities. The Malta boy connects the continents in a way we never anticipated, forcing us to ask what other surprising lineages are waiting to be discovered in the ancient soil of the Americas. His story reminds us that our maps of human movement are still being drawn, and that the most profound connections are often written in the language of life itself, waiting silently for thousands of years to be heard. The dry, volcanic soil of Ethiopia's Middle Awash region yielded a discovery that gave a face to our deepest ancestors. These were the Herto man fossils, 3 skulls dated to 160,000 years ago, and they were immediately hailed as the oldest known modern humans. Yet their modernity was not absolute. Classified as Homo sapiens idaltu, a subspecies name meaning elder in the local Afar language, these individuals possessed the high, rounded brain case we recognize in ourselves, but with heavier brow ridges and a more robust build. They were not quite us, but they were unmistakably on the path, a powerful snapshot of our species in its final stages of becoming. This find provided monumental support for the African origin of our species, but it also revealed that the journey to modern humanity was not a single, swift leap. Different populations across the continent were evolving at their own pace, a mosaic of experimentation that would eventually converge into the human form we know today. The most haunting clue, however, was not in the shape of the skulls but in their surface. 2 of the skulls, including one from a child, showed meticulous cut marks from stone tools, evidence of a careful and deliberate process of defleshing after death. This was not butchery. The patterns suggest a practiced post-mortem treatment, a handling of the remains that went far beyond mere disposal. It points to a ritual, a symbolic act performed for the community and for the one who had passed. What does this tell us about the minds of these ancient people? It reveals that 160,000 years ago, long before any human set foot in Europe or Asia, a profound shift in consciousness was occurring in Africa. These individuals were not just living and dying, they were grappling with the great mystery of mortality itself. They were creating meaning around the transition from life to whatever comes next. This early mortuary practice, this act of ceremonially preparing the skulls of the deceased, may represent the very seed of shared culture and spiritual belief. It suggests the bonds of community were strengthened not just by shared survival, but by shared ritual and a collective memory of those who came before. The Herto man fossils offer a poignant and powerful glimpse into the dawn of the human spirit, a moment when we began to honor our dead, and in doing so, laid the deepest foundations for the cultures that would one day span the globe. A simple hollowed-out log resting in the Dutch soil for 10,000 years carries the weight of an entire worldview. This is the Pesse canoe, the oldest known boat in the world, a vessel so humble in its construction it appears almost crude. Yet its implications are anything but. Carved from a single pine log around 8000 BCE, this canoe shatters the image of Mesolithic hunter-gatherers as landlocked wanderers. They were not just people of the forest and plain, they were people of the water. With this simple technology, the entire map of prehistoric Europe transforms. Rivers were no longer barriers but highways. Lakes were not obstacles but centers of community. Coastal waters became corridors to new worlds. This single craft proves that the movement of people, ideas, and goods was happening across liquid pathways with a speed and efficiency we never before attributed to this era. The colonization of places like the British Isles, separated from the mainland by treacherous channels, suddenly becomes a comprehensible feat. It was not an accidental drift on a log, but a deliberate, skilled act of navigation. These early mariners possessed a sophisticated understanding of currents, weather, and construction. They could follow migrating herds along river systems, access rich fishing grounds far from shore, and establish trade networks that connected distant communities. What stories, what technologies and mythologies were carried in these fragile vessels, passed from one river mouth to the next? The Pesse canoe symbolizes a fundamental human truth, that our curiosity has always been stronger than the fear of the unknown horizon. Long before the wheel revolutionized land travel, the boat had already unlocked the world, setting a course for the entire future of human exploration. 100,000 years ago, someone in a seaside cave in South Africa prepared for a project. They carefully selected an abalone shell, a natural bowl from the ocean, and filled it with a precise mixture of red ochre, crushed bone, charcoal, and a liquid binder. Then they set it aside, perhaps to thicken, perhaps to use another day. This was not a chance discovery. In Blombos cave, archaeologist Christopher Henshelwood uncovered 2 of these complete toolkits, each a silent workshop from a distant past. This is the earliest evidence of a planned chemical process, a recipe followed with intention. It reveals a mind capable of thinking in multiple steps, of gathering specific ingredients from different environments, and of understanding that their combination would create something new and valuable. This was not just making a tool, it was creating a substance with meaning. The vibrant red paint held a power beyond the practical. Its purpose, whether for adorning bodies during communal rituals, for painting symbols on skins or walls, or for marking objects with social significance, speaks to a revolution in human communication. This was the birth of symbolism, the ability to use a physical object to represent an abstract idea, a shared identity, or a spiritual belief. The ochre paint from Blombos cave proves that the cognitive spark of modernity, the capacity for complex abstract thought, was burning brightly in Africa tens of thousands of years before it appeared elsewhere. It forces us to ask what other expressions of this early genius have been lost to time, and to recognize that the human drive to create meaning, to leave a mark, is an ancient and fundamental part of who we are. The cave on Flores was not finished giving up its secrets. Years after the initial discovery of the tiny Homo floresiensis, a new team returned to Llangbua to conduct a more comprehensive geological analysis of the cave floor itself. Their work focused on the very sediment that cradled the bones, and their findings triggered a second, quieter revolution. The original dating was revised, revealing that the most recent Hobbit remains were not 60,000 years old, but perhaps as young as 50,000. This subtle shift in the timeline carries profound consequences. It means that when modern humans first began their island-hopping journey toward Australia, another kind of human was already there, watching from the forests of Flores. For a time, 2 different species of thinking, tool-making humans, shared the same archipelago. The world suddenly feels much smaller, and the past feels much more crowded. What was the nature of this shared moment in time? Did our paths ever directly cross? We have no evidence of violence, no smoking gun of conflict in the archaeological record. The truth of their encounter may have been far more complex, a slow, subtle interaction over generations. Perhaps there was curiosity, a cautious observation from a distance. There could have been trade, an exchange of unique resources or knowledge. Or, as genetic evidence from other regions suggests, there might have been interbreeding, a biological mingling that left its trace in a lineage now lost to time. The revised story of Llangbua forces us to live with a ghost. The disappearance of Homo floresiensis coincides strikingly with the arrival of our own species in the region. This timing is haunting, raising unavoidable questions about the role we may have played, directly or indirectly, in the final chapter of another human story. Was it competition for resources that they could not win, the introduction of new illnesses to which they had no immunity, or simply the relentless pressure of a more numerous and adaptable population? Their quiet exit from the world stage is one of the deepest mysteries of our own ascent. The empty chamber in Llangbua is a memorial to a lost branch of our family, a poignant reminder that for most of human history, we were not alone, and that our ultimate solitude as a species is a very recent and perhaps consequential state of being. A lone skull fragment from a Greek cave carries the ghost of a failed expedition. High in the Epidema cave, This single piece of bone was originally dismissed as just another Neanderthal fossil, but modern technology allowed researcher Katarina Harvotti and her team to look closer. Using advanced scanning and virtual reconstruction, they pieced the fragments back together digitally, revealing a shape that was startlingly modern. This was not a Neanderthal at all, but a Homo sapiens, a member of our own species. The real shock came with the dating, placing this individual in Greece over 210,000 years ago. This single date appends the entire timeline of human arrival in Europe, pushing it back by more than 150,000 years. The story of our species spread across the globe was never a single, unstoppable wave. It was a series of pulses, of brave forays into the unknown that often ended in silence. The Epidema individual was part of one of these first waves, a pioneer who reached Europe long before our successful ancestors. But the cave tells a second story. Layers of earth reveal that after this early human presence, Neanderthals moved back in, reclaiming the very same space. What happened to those first modern Europeans? They did not leave a genetic mark in people today. Their lineage vanished completely. They likely faced a world for which they were not fully prepared, a Europe dominated by well-adapted Neanderthal populations and subject to harsh, unpredictable swings in climate. They were the first to arrive, but they could not endure. This fossil is a monument to a deep time tragedy, a reminder that progress is not a straight line. For every successful migration that shaped our world, there were countless others that faded into obscurity, their stories written only in the lonely bones they left behind. Far to the south, where the misty forests of Chile meet the damp earth, a quiet marsh held a secret that would dismantle a century of American archaeology. This is Monte Verde, a place so perfectly preserved by a peat bog that time itself seemed to stand still. Here, archaeologist Tom Dillihay and his team uncovered not just stone tools, but the ghost of a village, a complete snapshot of life from 14,500 years ago. They found the wooden frames of simple huts, the clear outlines of hearths where families gathered, food scraps including ancient mastodon meat, and even a single chewed leaf from a medicinal plant. This was not a temporary camp, it was a settled community, thriving over 1,000 years before the famous Clovis culture ever emerged in North America. For decades, the Clovis first model was an unshakable doctrine, insisting that the first people were big game hunters who crossed a land bridge from Siberia and moved south through an ice-free corridor around 13,000 years ago. Monte Verde proved this timeline was impossible. Its undeniable evidence forced the entire archaeological community to accept a profound truth. The human story in the Americas was far older and more complex than anyone had dared to believe. The location of Monte Verde, far down the Pacific coast of South America, suggested a radically different migration route. How could people have reached Chile so early if they were slowly trekking on foot through the interior? The most logical answer is that they were masters of the shoreline, skilled mariners who used boats to hop, island by island, along the rich and ice-free Pacific coast, moving with remarkable speed from north to south. This coastal migration theory opened an entirely new chapter of exploration, turning our gaze from the continent's interior to its vast, submerged shorelines, landscapes now hidden beneath the rising seas. What other settlements like Monte Verde lie buried under ocean sediments, holding the full story of these first coastal pioneers? This single site did more than just rewrite a date. It rewrote an entire journey, revealing the Americas not as an empty wilderness waiting to be discovered, but as a land with a deep, layered, and profoundly ancient human history. A deep, narrow fissure in the South African limestone leads to a chamber that was isolated from the world for hundreds of thousands of years. To reach the Dmanisi chamber, one must descend a vertical chute so tight that only the smallest and most slender researchers could squeeze through, a passage that feels more like a birth canal into the deep past. It was here, in this profound darkness, that a team led by Lee Berger made one of the most staggering fossil finds of the century, the remains of Homo naledi. They recovered over 1,500 bones belonging to at least 15 individuals, a treasure trove from a species entirely new to science. This was not a single skeleton, but an entire community resting together. The dating of these remains placed them in a pivotal window between 236,000 and 335,000 years ago, a time when our own Homo sapiens was just beginning to emerge in Africa. And this is where the mystery deepens into a profound challenge. Homo naledi was a walking contradiction. It possessed a small brain, only about a third the size of our own, nestled in a body that mixed ancient, ape-like shoulders with surprisingly modern human features. Its hands were capable of a precision grip, perfect for crafting tools, while its feet were adapted for long-distance walking across open landscapes. This was a creature built for two worlds, the trees and the ground, a living mosaic of our evolutionary past. But the most revolutionary aspect of the discovery lies in the context of the bones themselves. How did so many individuals, from infants to the elderly, end up in this incredibly remote, nearly inaccessible chamber? There are no signs of a predator's lair, no evidence of a catastrophic cave collapse or a flash flood that could have washed them all in. The most compelling and controversial explanation is that their bodies were deliberately placed there by other members of their group after they had passed. This single possibility shatters a foundational belief in human evolution, the idea that complex, symbolic behaviors like the ritualized treatment of the dead were the exclusive domain of large-brained hominins like ourselves. If Homo naledi, with its small brain, was capable of such a practice, what does that say about the nature of intelligence itself? It suggests that the cognitive spark for cultural complexity, for a shared sense of mortality and community, may not be tied to the volume of the brain, but to something else entirely, perhaps the intricate wiring within, or the profound pressures of social life. The Rising Star Cave system does not just present us with a new ancestor, it confronts us with a ghost that questions our very definitions of consciousness and culture. Did Homo naledi possess a form of sentience we are only beginning to comprehend, a different path to a shared human experience that ultimately faded into the deep shadows of time? The Arctic wind howls across a landscape of ice and stone, a world that seems utterly hostile to human life. Yet on the banks of the remote Yana River in Siberia, a collection of stone tools and a carefully worked piece of woolly rhinoceros horn tell a different story. These artifacts, dated to 30,000 years ago, mark the oldest and most northern evidence of human presence ever found in the Arctic. This was not a fleeting visit. The Yana rhinoceros horn site represents a permanent settlement, a community that had mastered survival at the very edge of the possible during the depths of the Ice Age. This discovery shatters previous timelines, pushing back the human colonization of the high Arctic by a staggering 15,000 years. It forces us to completely rethink the capabilities of these ancient pioneers. They were not just surviving, they were thriving, hunting the now vanished giants of the Ice Age steppe, creatures like the woolly rhinoceros and mammoth. The worked horn is a key to their ingenuity, likely shaped into a vital tool or weapon, proving they were not merely scavengers but active, successful hunters of megafauna. How did they accomplish this? The answer lies in a revolution of social and technological adaptation that we are only beginning to understand. They must have developed sophisticated, tailored clothing from animal hides, constructed sturdy, insulated shelters from mammoth bones and sod, and perfected communal hunting strategies that turned the harsh environment to their advantage. They possessed a deep, generational knowledge of the land and its rhythms. The Yana site is more than an archaeological find. It is a testament to the relentless human drive to push boundaries. Long before modern technology, these early people gazed upon one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth and did not see a barrier, they saw a home. Their success in the frozen north paved the way for the final great human migration, the journey across the Bering Land bridge into the Americas. It stands as a powerful monument to our species' incredible resilience, a story of endurance written not in warm, fertile valleys, but in ice and ancient bone at the top of the world. The red soil of Arnhem Land holds the echoes of an arrival so ancient it recalibrates the entire human journey. At the Majidbeb rock shelter, archaeologist Chris Clarkson and his team uncovered a cultural layer so deep and rich it pushed human presence in Australia back to 65,000 years ago. This was not a simple campsite, it was a thriving hub of innovation. Among the thousands of artifacts lay a stunning technological first, the world's oldest edge-ground axes. These were not just crudely chipped stones. These tools had been carefully shaped and then ground against an abrasive rock to create a sharp, durable, and symmetrical working edge. This was a tool designed for a new life, a deliberate craft perfected for working wood and shaping a new world. Alongside these axes, they found vast quantities of ochre, the vibrant pigment used for artistic and symbolic expression, proving that these first Australians arrived not as primitive survivors, but as fully modern people with a complex culture already in place. This single date, 65,000 years, sends a seismic shock through the timeline of human migration. It means that modern humans left Africa and accomplished an epic voyage across the scattered islands of Southeast Asia, reaching the far southern continent a staggering 15,000 years earlier than anyone had proven. To stand on that northern Australian shore 65,000 years ago was to stand at the edge of the known world. The journey here was one of the greatest feats of exploration in human history, requiring multiple sea crossings on rudimentary watercraft across vast stretches of open ocean, voyages that would have been invisible from one island to the next. This early arrival also coincides hauntingly with the gradual disappearance of Australia's unique megafauna, the giant wombats, massive kangaroos, and fearsome reptiles that once roamed the landscape. This timing raises profound and difficult questions about the relationship between humanity and the ecosystems we enter. Did these first Australians, with their advanced tools and burning practices, play a role in this transformation, or were they simply witnesses to a change driven by a shifting climate? The evidence at Majidbeb does not provide easy answers, but it firmly places humanity at the center of a new and evolving ancient landscape. This shelter marks the beginning of the longest continuous cultural story on Earth, a narrative of adaptation and resilience that started with an incredible journey across the sea. Deep beneath the French countryside, a cave sealed for millennia guards a secret built not by us, but by our long-lost cousins. In Bruniquel Cave, explorers discovered something that defies simple explanation: a series of large, circular structures meticulously assembled from hundreds of broken stalagmites. These are not random piles, but deliberate constructions, walls built in the pitch black, more than 1,300 feet from the cave's entrance. The dating of these rings sent a shock through the scientific community. They were built 176,000 years ago. At this time, modern humans were still confined to Africa. The architects of this subterranean wonder were Neanderthals. This single fact shatters the outdated image of the Neanderthal as a simple-minded cave dweller. To build here in absolute darkness required a sophisticated and coordinated effort. A team would have had to carefully break the heavy stone formations, carry them to the chosen spot, and arrange them with clear intention, all while relying on the flickering light of fire. Charred remnants of burned bones found in the center of the rings confirm they brought fire with them, mastering its use not for warmth or cooking, but for illumination in a place where the sun never reaches. This was an expedition, not an accident. It speaks to a level of planning, social organization, and shared purpose we never before granted them. What was the purpose of this dark sanctuary? The rings are too large to be shelters and show no signs of daily habitation. Their configuration feels ceremonial, a place set apart from the ordinary world. Was it a meeting place for rituals we can no longer comprehend? A celestial calendar aligned with some forgotten knowledge, or a monument to the very act of exploration itself? The Bruniqual structures stand as a profound and silent question from the Neanderthal mind. They force us to recognize that the inner world of our cousins, their capacity for symbolism, and their drive to create meaning in the most inhospitable of places, was far richer and more complex than we ever imagined. We are left staring into the darkness, wondering what thoughts passed through their minds as they built their mysterious circles in the eternal night. The vast, silent mound of Huaca Prieta rises from the arid Peruvian coast, a man-made mountain of ash, shell, and stone that has endured for 8,000 years. To stand before it is to confront a profound mystery, a monument built not by the famous Inca or even the ancient Chavin, but by a people whose name is lost to time. This is not a pyramid of glittering gold, but a testament to a different kind of wealth, a cultural complexity that flourished millennia before the advent of pottery or maize agriculture in the region. Within its layered history, archaeologists uncovered evidence of a society deeply connected to the sea, yet astonishingly advanced in its cultural expressions. They found remnants of elaborate textiles, some of the oldest ever discovered in the Americas, woven with intricate patterns that speak of a sophisticated artistic tradition. They unearthed gourds carefully carved with intricate designs depicting geometric patterns and mythical beings, proving that the human need for symbolic expression was alive and well on this coastline thousands of years ago. This was not a simple fishing village. The sheer scale of the mound itself, built basket by basket over countless generations, points to a highly organized society capable of coordinated labor and a shared vision that spanned centuries. The people of Huaca Prieta did not follow the script we once thought was mandatory for civilization. They thrived on a rich diet of maritime resources, from anchovies to sea lions, proving that the pathway to social complexity does not require farming grain. They built a stable, enduring society on the bounty of the Pacific, developing a unique culture that was both practical and profoundly spiritual. What belief systems held this society together for so long, and what social structures allowed them to plan and execute such a monumental project? The quiet mound offers no easy answers, only the certainty that our models for the rise of civilization are far too narrow. Huaca Prieta forces us to widen our gaze and accept that there are many ways to build a world, and that some of the most enduring are those written not in fields of corn, but in the timeless rhythm of the waves. A massive, almost perfectly preserved skull rested for decades in a forgotten well, its true significance hidden from the world. This is the Harbin cranium, a fossil so complete and so strange that it has been declared the representative of an entirely new human species, Homo longi, or dragon man. Discovered in northeastern China and dating back at least 146,000 years, this single skull forces a dramatic rearrangement of our closest relatives on the human family tree. Its features are a stunning mosaic, a large brain case that rivals our own, combined with heavy brow ridges, square eye sockets, and a wide, flat face. It is a face that is at once familiar and deeply alien. The revolutionary analysis led by researcher Jai Qiang proposes that Dragon Man is not a distant cousin, but perhaps our closest known evolutionary relative, even closer than the Neanderthals. This single claim reshuffles the entire deck of human origins. For so long, the story of our recent evolution was a drama between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. The Hobbit skull introduces a powerful third actor from Asia, a continent whose role we have consistently underestimated. If Dragon Man is indeed our sister lineage, then the last common ancestor we share with Neanderthals must be pushed back much deeper in time, perhaps beyond 750,000 years ago. This recalibration stretches our history to a new scale of antiquity. Where does this leave the other enigmatic figures in our past, like the Denisovans, known only from fragments of bone and teeth? Some scientists now wonder if the massive, robust molars we have attributed to Denisovans might actually belong to the Dragon Man lineage. The puzzle of Asian prehistory, once a collection of scattered, unconnected pieces, is now revealing a vibrant and complex ecosystem of different human species, each adapting and thriving in its own niche. The Hobbit skull is more than just a new fossil. It is a key that unlocks a lost world in the East, a realm where another advanced human lineage may have walked the earth for hundreds of thousands of years. Its discovery compels us to ask a humbling question: how many other foundational branches of the human family are still waiting in the darkness, their stories sealed in stone, ready to rewrite our own? These 25 discoveries are not isolated curiosities, but pieces of a single, breathtaking mosaic. When you step back to view the entire picture, a grand pattern emerges, one that shatters the most persistent myth of all, the idea of a single, straight line of human progress leading inevitably to us. The true story of our origins is not a straight line at all, but a tangled bush, a sprawling family tree with countless branches, many of which grew, intertwined, and eventually fell away, leaving only their echoes in our DNA. This new narrative, built from the stones and bones we have uncovered, reveals a world where multiple human species shared the planet, each one a unique experiment in what it means to be human. They were not failed prototypes on the way to us. They were fully realized cousins, adapting to their own environments, developing their own forms of culture, and sometimes meeting our own ancestors in moments of connection that changed the course of history forever. The evidence is undeniable. Key human traits like toolmaking, art, and ritual did not appear in one brilliant flash. They flickered to life at different times and in different places, from the red ochre paint kits of South Africa to the mysterious stone circles built by Neanderthals in the deep dark of a French cave. This forces a profound and humbling realization: our own species' success was not preordained. We were not the destined winners of an evolutionary race. Our survival was the result of a specific set of adaptations, a measure of resilience, and perhaps an element of sheer luck that allowed us to persist while so many of our cousins faded into silence. This is a story that belongs to the entire globe, a shared heritage written into the soil of every continent. It is a narrative far richer, more complex, and ultimately more interesting than the simple march of progress we were once taught. It asks us to look at the empty spaces on the map and in the fossil record with a new sense of wonder. What other lost journeys and forgotten cousins are waiting to be found, ready to add another twist to this endlessly fascinating story of us? From the ritual pillars of Göbekli Tepe to the enigmatic skull of Dragon Man, our journey through these 25 discoveries reveals a single, transformative truth. The story of our origins is not a simple line of progress, but a vibrant tapestry woven from countless threads, many of which we are only now beginning to see. We have encountered a world populated by diverse human cousins, a planet where the qualities we think of as uniquely human, from art to ritual to complex technology, flickered to life in fits and starts across the globe, often in species very different from our own. This new understanding is profoundly humbling. It reveals that our survival was not a foregone conclusion, but one possible outcome in a grand, ancient experiment. The evidence we have walked through together does more than just fill in missing pages. It forces us to rewrite the entire book, chapter by chapter. History is not a static record carved in stone, but a living narrative that shifts with every new discovery, with every artifact pulled from the earth. Let these stories inspire in you a deep and abiding wonder for our shared planet-wide heritage, and a burning curiosity for all that remains hidden just beneath the surface of our world. The next great discovery, the one that will once again challenge all our assumptions, could be waiting in a forgotten cave, a crumbling riverbank, or an unassuming mound of earth, just a trowel's turn away from changing everything. We would love to hear which of these discoveries reshaped your own view of the human story, so please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this exploration into our deep past, subscribe to continue the journey with us as we uncover more of the mysteries that make us who we are.